What up, everybody? Scuff D here. And today we are going to go ahead and take a look at a warlord that doesn't get enough play because, well, quite frankly, people are attracted to his better half, is what they would like to say. I'm taking a look at Argel Tal. Now, Argel Tal is an awesome character, lore-wise, story-wise, probably one of the better, likable word bearers. If you're not a word bearers fan, and if you are a word bearers fan, I hope you prefer him over Erebus. But I've played Argel Tal since very early on, since before they had the changes to the word bearers. I put up some little highlight videos a long time back with Argel Tal. I think one of them I beat like Old Canis Vertex, which was a hard thing to do, and yet it was done. It was possible. But Argel Tal gets a lot of shade because he's a 30 hit point warlord, and while he's got high initiative, his Raum warlord has a 3 attack and has that amazing battle honor, right? He's got that battle honor that hides, that heals 2, and he's unstoppable. You have to build your deck a little bit differently, obviously. And I played more games with Argel Tal. I enjoyed Argel Tal, and I figured let's show off that Argel Tal, especially with some of the changes to the word bearers, because he was viable before, he just wasn't as attractive before. He's still very playable warlord, and he actually, because of the deck constructions, if you're making more use of the word bearers cards, then you're going to be able to use Argel Tal, whereas if you aren't going to use as many word bearers cards in your deck, then it seems like a natural fit that you're going to play Raum. Now, as you can see, the win percentage I've got with Argel Tal just since the warlord stats feature became a thing, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. The majority of these, I would probably say, out of the 21 games, probably like 15 of them or so are just in this last week. And as I said, I played him before that too, so he's fine. He's fun. He's different. You want something different. So what does he do? He's got a 1 energy ability, and he deals 1 damage, and if the target dies, he can act again. Now, if the target dies, it also reduces his Blessed Sun down by 2 when he kills a unit. Now, that's also including any units that attack him via like a face strike, like a Goldstone Hunter's a fast unit coming in, hitting him. It'll drop that cost. Now, granted, you're taking some damage when it's doing that, but that will also lower your cost. So technically, if 6 units are destroyed by Argel Tal over the course of a game, I'm sorry, 3 units by the cost of the game, then Blessed Sun is a 9 cost, and it can go very low very quickly, especially if your opponent is fielding a lot of troops. But there was a few word bearers cards that I wanted to make use of in the deck, and to kind of function with some of the changes that they made, I found that the synergy between cultists and demons worked out very well, especially kind of just as an unorthodox or a deck that people don't necessarily see coming. Right? They see Argel Tal on the load screen, they're thinking, it's Raum, great, fantastic. But then they get Argel Tal and they're like, okay, all right, so I guess just word bearers, and you're playing word bearers, but what are you playing? Are you playing demons? Are you playing? Okay, and then before they know it, you're within lethal range, or before you know it, they fed into you dropping a big fat nasty. So let's take a look at the deck here. Now, you do need some degree of protection here. There's not a lot, but there are some key cards in here that offer degrees of protection, and I found some of the changes work very well with this deck, with Argel Tal, with word bearers in general, but specifically Argel Tal, who needs to kind of operate on putting target troops away from him. High-value troops that your opponent wants to deal with and cannot let sit. That takes heat off of Argel Tal. That lets his late-game options grow and increase in terms of viability. If you are sitting back trying to play a longer game with a low hit point warlord, you've got to find ways to distract your opponent. And the word bearers have a way of doing that, but in adding to that with some key units, I think really helps buy the time that's necessary. So first off, the changes to Borodal Squad were very good, very simple. They still get the +1 to infantry, but that backlash, putting in that acolyte, it goes a long ways, especially with some of the demons that you can have in play, be it Chaos Spawn, Slayer of Worlds, Yuri the Seducer, whatever the case may be, or anything generated by Book of Lorgar. That little +1/+1 is nice, but also they're an infantry unit that can be sacrificed for several of your units, giving them key abilities. Not only are you getting key abilities, but hopefully you're bolstering demons as well. And we should see that in a couple of the replay games. So they fit pretty well, and as a low-cost card that allows me to drop Bordeaux Squad, it allows me to use Argel Tal's ability. If I really wanted to, and I have, I could drop Bordeaux Squad, use Argel Tal's ability for an additional energy, kill those guys, get an Acolyte, either use that Acolyte to sacrifice or kill the Acolyte with Argel Tal, lowers ability. Generally, I try not to kill my own troops with my abilities because that feeds into everybody else. But it is an option. It is possible. You don't have to do it. You don't have to have a Phacidian infantry to draw a card. There's better synergy within the cultists and the acolytes, the Cygnus Prime cultists, and the Wordbearer faction. I found that 2 Terror in Realities seemed a little bit over at this point in time, especially as there's a lot of decks that run minimal troops. So just having 1 and knowing when to use it is good, versus having 2 and then otherwise your hand. Some of these cards in here, if you end up with a handful of them against a troopless deck, you've got a handful of dead cards, and that's not what you want. You want 1, maybe 2 cards in your hand that you can't do anything with. But if you've got 4 or 5 cards sitting in your hand that you can't do anything with, then you've got to take a look at your deck construction. So Zexical Squad, these guys feed in very easily, very basically to everything. Be it putting bodies on the board, be it giving cultists or sacrificing infantry. That's just a given. The changes to Daggertal bikes work out really well. Giving the random enemy with the stealth losing it early on, these guys can help you deal with some of those cheap stealth units. They can help reveal something with the 4 health, flank it, and then you can use your ability. Or because they're low cost, if you've got other bodies on board, you can flank it, break the stealth, use your other guys to destroy whatever's in stealth, keep a 3/2 out there. So these guys were not initially included in my early Word Bears decks, but following the changes, I found them to be very useful. Then you've got your staple, legendaries. You've got Sword Backpaw. I've got Book of Lorgar, which normally doesn't go in a lot of Word Bears decks. It definitely goes in this one because I'm packing Yuri the Seducer and Slayer of Worlds. Ideally, unless there's not many other options, ideally I don't want to play either of those 2 cards until I've played the Book of Lorgar. And with Slayer of Worlds, it's very possible to play Book of Lorgar and Slayer of Worlds in the same turn. Because you can get the Slayer Worlds down to like a 3 cost or a 0 cost. Play a Book of Lorgar, gain 2 demons, drop the Slayer, maintenance free 15/15. What's not to like? Architect of Heresy is a good card. It's not fantastic, like hard removal, but if you're taking control of something or you're bouncing it to hand, you are in some way ideally removing a threat off of the board. I found that just works better than like Balthazar's Sword. If you don't have Architect, you could use Balthazar's Sword. It's okay, but gaining a unit is really the selling point with that. Now, Barge, again, we're talking about defense. Barge is important for me for defense, but it's also important because in the event that my opponent does not kill all of my frontline troops that Barge generates, which, to be honest, that's a slim chance, but if they don't, that should be infantry troops that, again, feed into my units. Now, you'll see I've got a Fanatical Zeal here because I think healing is key with a low health Warlord. I have Sibilants. And Sibilants, you might think, well, that's kind of, who wants to use that backlash? Well, it works really well when you're sacrificing them, either to Ashen Circle or to Gaelic Squad, who are the other ones that I've found with the changes. Giving them Ward, they still have 3 health. That can kind of be a pain, and depending on if your opponent has like a lot of random damage or flankers in hand, they can still deal with these guys. But if they cannot, they have to find a way to do it. Even if they have a 3 hit point Warlord or 3 attack Warlord, they're going to have to take that 5 to strike at this thing directly. And that's, again, taking that off of your Warlord and exchanging for higher damage. So Gaelic Squad, actually, I like. You don't have to use them every game, but they've worked out very well. And because of the mixtures of infantry that are in here, not just Pi Alpha, but the ones that are generated by, the Jadimus squad, or by the Zexical squad, or by the Bordal squad, all these units are generating cultists. It makes it very easy to do the sacrifice with Ashen Circle without losing anything, without having to play an additional card in hand, theoretically. You can play Barge, gain 3 to 4 infantry, and then have 1 or so left over, maybe not, but enough to buy you time to play something nastier, like the Dark Martyr. Dark Martyr it's just the best. It's just the best. It's my favorite common, I think. I think at this point in the game, I'm not a Wordbearers fan. The art is, it's from the First Heretic. It's from cover art from the First Heretic. And damn it, this is just an awesome card. If this snowballs, if this sticks with Survivor or Ward, that in of itself can end games sometimes. But Sore Backpaw with a bunch of cultists turned into Chaos Spawn can also end games. So all of these cards kind of tie in. They tie in thematically, but they also tie in synergy-wise in terms of having infantry. If your Jubok is just about used up his usefulness, or your opponent's got him down to 1 health and he's going to die next turn anyways, but you want to turn that Ashen Circle into a fast unit, go for it. Or attack with the Jubok, bring him to 1 health, then attack with the Ashen Circle, who's a fast. You've just done 7 damage, and it's not something that your opponent might expect. Now, granted, it's not all the time that you're going to be in a situation like that, but you might have other troops, such as the Horus Occultists that are generated by Jadimus Squad, or the just the good old-fashioned Zealots that are provided by Zexical Squad. So as a deck, there's synergy there, and then you're bringing up big, heavy demons, either via the Book of Lorgar, which can generate those wonderful daemonettes, which are 5/4 fasts. And I'll tell you what, getting a 5/4 fast plus a 5/4 fast, that's 10 damage, good game. Or dropping a Slayer of Worlds that has no maintenance on it. Or even if it's late game and your opponent has no answers, and you drop a Slayer of Worlds, maintenance 7 sucks, but they don't have an answer to a 15/15, so that's still a win-win. So let's take a look at some of the games that I've got here. Playing some event games here. Challenges. Let's go. There we go. Argel Tals. These are a lot of them pinned. I don't have enough time to go through all of them, but there were some good ones that kind of highlight some of the cards, not just like one specific strategy, but just kind of how all the cards work together. And I kind of wanted to go through and kind of show those. Some of them are, sometimes you get a little bit of luck, but really it's just knowing what your opponent is doing, and being able to build, respond, and push that threat to units away from Argel Tal. Buy yourself some time. You don't have to go into Raum. I would probably say less than 50% of my games as Argel Tal, maybe like 30% of my games as Argel Tal, I go into Raum. Very rarely do I actually go into Raum. Now, I left the Daicalinton there because of that Sentinel. I wanted to force him to lose some cards. I'm going to eat some damage there. That's not fantastic, but I'm actually okay with it. I'm actually fine with that, because it forced him to pay 2 energy to draw a card, and that's a good trade-off for me. And as you can see, my Slayer of Worlds, we're starting off at 15, but it's very quickly going down. It's a 11 now. Next turn, I don't know. I'm not sure quite how low we can get it. Let's take a look. Let's take a look and see how low we can get it. And that 1 energy, here's an example where I can use my ability. I can get a cultist. I can use the fast, gain it, and not only did I do that, but in the course of this 1 turn, I just dropped the Slayer of Worlds by 4 cost. Now, that's 1 card. It's not the card. It's not the end-all, game-all, but it is a card, and if you can get it out with 2 or 3 other units because it's 0 cost and you've got a Book of Lorgar, your opponent cannot respond to all of that. So now we're kind of in a pinch here. We're going to have to put some action down. We've got some flankers here. We've got the ability to deal the damage. It's not enough to lethal, but it is enough to give us Argel Tal to ping as we need, right? A little bit of luck with the Mark of Chaos. I will not deny. There's a little bit of luck there. If I needed to, could have just thrown out the Slayer and hopefully detracted there, depending on what he had in his hand. But as you can see actually here on this turn, that's it. That's what he's got. That's what he's got. And it's not going to be enough here. Even with 7 maintenance, it's enough for me to use Ambassador Melgator. And that's a monster just tearing up Constantine Valdor. So that's one game there where kind of you just see the ability of using Argel Tal, kind of properly using or timing the synergy of your troops. With the word bearers, with Argel Tal especially, but with word bearers in general, you do not want to just spam drop your troops. You really want to time how you deploy them so that you can make the most use of them either on that turn or on the following turn, depending on what type of game your opponent's playing. If they're not aggressive or if they don't have any way to respond to your 3 troops on board, then you've got a good advantage to set up something for your next turn. Whether it works out perfectly or not remains to be seen, but if it works out to some degree, it's still a success. Degrees of success, folks. Degrees of success. So here is a much more straight up aggressive deck. You're going to, aside from maybe Kabanda or another Raum, you're not going to find too many other aggressive style decks out there than Angron, straightforward. You could probably say like the Khan, Jacques Tai Khan, definitely can lay it out. But we're not going to go that long in this game. We're going to get close. We're going to get close, but we're not going to go into, well, we kind of do. Yeah, we're going to get to 10 energy. We're going to get to 10 energy. And that's when, that's usually enough to do damage. And that's right now, early on the game, I am focusing everything on healing and getting myself the time that I need. Putting threats on the board. He has to respond to Jadimus, right? And he knows that all my cultists are just going to die from the get-go. So in the meantime, I'm just going to do what I can. And we're at 7 energy, and both Angron and Argel Tal, until that attack right there, were even health. And then we just draw fire, put some pressure out there. A Remembrance Order, you never know what you're going to get. Maybe he'll play an Armor of Mars. Maybe he'll play a sweep in advance, which could be useful. In the meantime, I'm banking that he probably went for a Conqueror with that command bridge. So I'm just going to take advantage of it while I can. I'm going to let him get rid of my Yuria. And I'm going to hope that he doesn't have a second Conqueror. Now, I could play the Camille and a Jadimus, but I'm going to put up that big fat front line, have more bodies on board, and he does not have a Conqueror. So he's going to take a lot of damage here. So we did go to 10 energy, but it didn't last long. It didn't last long at all. And that's just, again, the synergy. Having those troops cost 2 less each is great, but even with 10 energy, that's something that you can do for 7. You can drop the Zesical and actually for 6. Zesical and the Ashen Circle for 6 energy. And get a 5/4 fast, which is almost comparable to a 6 energy Seekers of Slaanesh from the Ruinstorm. The difference is they've got sneak attack, and they've also got to kill one of their units, which could be demons as opposed to infantry, but roughly same trade-off. So there's an aggressive deck. There's a kind of a beefy, thick deck in terms of the Custodes. There's another deck, the Perturabo deck. Now, Perturabo is currently seeing a lot of play with with his ability to deal out direct damage, arcology, viral bombs. So how do you respond to that? You just put again, pressure on your units that he's got to respond to, have more bodies out there. Hope you get a little lucky, but ultimately you're racing to put more threats on board than he can respond to. And that's actually the strategy of any type of swarm deck. And Legions doesn't have a lot of swarm decks. We've got a few cards that if they are left unchecked, like Toads or Farron's Militia with Numian, you can get that degree of swarm, but it's very low cost, and late game it doesn't work as effectively. But the Word Bearers can find a way to make it work very, very well. So he went down to try to drop as much as he possibly could here, to hopefully put up a wall, I think. And it's not enough to kill that one guy, but it's enough to trigger my ability. And I'm going to hold off on that Zesigal squad just yet. I've got a Sword Backpaw coming up. Again, another just one of the many cards in the Word Bearers playbook, but especially in terms of this deck. If you're playing a direct damage deck, Sword Backpaw is not going to do much for you. If you're not playing with demons, the Book of Lorgar is not going to do much for you. Architect of Heresy is going to do something for you 50% of the time, if depending on what your opponent, your warlord's playing. Like, I could use it here, except for the fact that I've got those Chaos Spawns, right? My maintenance cost has reduced my energy, so otherwise I would have loved to have stolen his big fat front line. Instead, I'm going to do it the hard way. We're just going to slam our face into it instead and show him that, guess what? Despite all that, I still have more bodies than you. He gets so bad that he's got to use his Contrador on my big nasty Coriel Seth, Kurthus Sed, I should say, Kurthus Sed. And I mean, he's dedicated 3 actions now to just 2 cards, and he's left me with 3 troops on board, probably thinking, okay, well, they're maintenance. It's going to reduce his options to do anything, and to some degree that's true, but in terms of where he's at, he's very easily within lethal range. And we're going to wrap this game up very quickly. We've got Terran Reality, we've got Zesigal, we've got Ashen Circle. I don't even have to do anything. I could drop the... I like to keep the Zealots out, honestly, because Zesigal, if he goes back in my deck, he comes back out, he plays more Zealots. So some people like to do, like, I'll just lose a Wounded Zealot and you lose a big fat line, but I want those Wounded Zealots on board because I want to sacrifice them. And I want Zesigal back in my deck because I want to get more Wounded Zealots. So, little tip there if you haven't thought of that. Do I have enough time? I don't think I've got enough time. I might have enough time for one more game. One more game. This one here was kind of your good old-fashioned. We did that one there. Kinza, that was a quick game. That was too quick. Let's do Guilliman. Guilliman versus Thiel. Now, so far, these are 3 games. I've not had to go into ROM mode at all. I've not had to go into ROM mode at all. And just because of putting out the pressure, putting out a lot of bodies, they're lower cost. You got to get going. You got to put threats on the board. Guilliman, unfortunately, is going to be a problem for me because the Ultramarines have a very high healing pool. And to go with that, the courage mechanic can be problematic because it can kind of turn my strategy as far as having a lot of bodies on board against me. Now, I'm not going to play Book of Lorgar just yet because I want to, this early on, I really want to swarm the board. I really want to hit as many as I possibly can. And I like the fact that because Argel Tal's ability is 1, it allows me to use his ability right here. When normally if you had like a warlord with an ability 2, you'd have to face strike that. But that's not an option here. I don't have to go that way. And while he's got the mantle of Ultramar, which is not something you see every day, but it works just the same. I've got Sibilants. I'm feeling good. I can bounce anything that he throws at me. I don't like putting him down there when he can kind of control what gets bounced. But on the other hand, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. I've still got cards in hand. I've got demons. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Now my maintenance is gone. And I'm not sure what he was going there, if he was just trying to force the bounce. But where this is going at this point, I'm perfectly fine. Getting a couple chaos spawns, putting some bodies on the board, forcing him into courage mode, as it were. And he's going to get a big fat nasty right there. 5/7 guy who's going to heal. What am I going to do about that? Well, I've got some options, right? I've got some options, but I'm going to focus everything I can on putting heat on his warlord and drawing fire from my warlord, right? He has to respond to the bodies I'm still putting on board. As long as my sword backpaw remains stealthed, he's feeding me more spawn, I'm okay with that. My maintenance is not there. I can drop the Slayer of Worlds once I get to a position where I think he'll be safe on board, but we don't even need to get to that point. And I don't know why he didn't go for the Catamus, but it worked out. He could have gone for the Catamus, and I still would have had enough with the Camille and some other cards in hand. I was not worried at all. But that's just it. That's how the deck operates. That's how Argel Tal operates in a different level with the Word Bearers. The Word Bearers changes were good. I won't mince words. They were good. They needed a couple tweaks. They got a couple tweaks. There's still some holes within the set, within the faction. Some cards work better than others, but some cards are designed more for Lorgar or Erebus or Zardu. Argel Tal works with just your basic infantry and Astartes combining together to form that fusion. And like I said, as long as you want to play with a little bit more Word Bearers cards than neutral cards, you can make an Argel Tal deck very viable that works out just fine. If your opponent doesn't have troops, you won't be Raum. So you build your deck in according with that, and knowing that, okay, I'm not going to be able to go to Raum some games, so give me health, give me options, give me ways to distract my opponent or put frontline up. And as opposed to having cards that might work more with Lorgar, or having like lots of damage. I don't want to do damage to myself. I don't want to deal 2 damage to every unit. I'm fine just dealing 4 damage to something if I need to. I'm fine putting bodies on the board and letting those do the work for me. If they get moved away with Yusegi's Targetized Sacrifice, or if they get returned to hand, so be it. I've got plenty to come at you, and the idea is there's just too much at some point for somebody to respond to. Now, the weaknesses of the deck itself, it's hard to say because there's a synergy there. If you just drop cards, if you're just playing cards just to play cards, and you're putting your troops on the board and you don't really time your moves out, if you don't properly play a Kurthus set to get the sacrifice, if you're not tweaking your cultist and using them in conjunction with demons, if you're not playing Book of Lorgar before you drop a high cost Slayer of Worlds, you're setting yourself up at a disadvantage and really just need to make smarter plays within the deck. But it works out very well. Again, as I said, I've played him before the tweaks when they first came out with the faction, and I enjoyed them, and had some amazing wins that I think people were. I like to imagine the opponents on the other side being like, "Oh, what?" Especially that Canis Vertex game. That just, I got to find the video for that somewhere if I can find it. It's like at the tail end of something else, just like a little like highlight clip. I'll put it in here. I don't know if I can find that or not, but that was fun. That was fun. Good times. Anyways, that's it, guys. That's the Argel Tal there. It's very doable. He's a rare warlord. He's a simple warlord. He's got a lot of options to him within his faction, and I think sometimes he gets overlooked because he's got a better half that people are just like, well, I'll just go that way. I'll just play Chaos, and I got 3 attack, and I've got Unstoppable. I think at some point down the road, we'll probably see some change to Raum to some degree, be it they tweak his battle honor or they change up the requirements for his deck construction. Something will happen there. When it does, I hope people realize that Argel Tal is still a warlord, and he still works just fine. And the card pool of the Word Bearers works very good to support him. So hopefully that was inspiring. Hopefully that gave you some ideas there, guys. And let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the video, you want to see more like the video, subscribe if you have not already. Spread the word for those folks who are looking for Word Bearers decks or Argel Tal decks or just something off the mainstream. The whole point is just to play fun. There are 87 warlords. Next week there's going to be 88 warlords with the inclusion of Samus from the event. 88 warlords in the game. So there is no reason why you can't pick something differently than 4 warlords that people are playing. There's plenty more to go around. There's lots of options out there, and pick one that you want to play, that you want to have fun with, because you can have fun with any of them. You just have to decide, you know, how to start, and hopefully I gave you something to start with. So that's it for me, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Until then, keep playing Legions.